Mr. President, it's too much, and I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning.
Recently, an incredibly interesting situation developed in the American discourse. The Trump victory happened thanks to a very diverse and very fascinating coalition of different factions, ranging from real die-hard MAGA nationalists to disgruntled liberals who just really don't like the big gay party. As is the case of any victory based on a diverse coalition, the moment the outer fight is over, the coalition suddenly needs to work out the kinks of its inner philosophical mechanism. In this specific case, the whole situation revolves around a degree to which a country should try to import foreign talent in order to bolster its economical and inventive capabilities. On one side, we have the Techbros Muscovites, whose practical, number-driven, entrepreneurial view of the American ecosystem leads them to side with the globalistic outlook. The other side is what I would call the spiritually patriotic MAGA movement, the people who focus on the soul of the nation, its revival and preservation. Well, I will not preach to Americans what to choose for Americans. That's a problem for Americans. No, thank you. Instead, in my today's sermon, I want to take both positions and show that neither of them is really addressing the true issue: excellence and its struggle against the mass society of global modernity. And this is a problem shared by everyone on a civilizational scale. Welcome to Magne Mirare. On a practical level, this whole situation boils down to the Techbros wanting to bolster the industry with imported talent, while the patriots would prefer to even sacrifice the potential growth it would cause in order to keep their national identity intact and essentially to force the industry's expectations to reorient itself towards a smaller, homegrown supply and demand. And look, I must say, I respect both sides and their arguments quite a lot. On one hand, I suspect that within our reach are incredible discoveries and inventions, things that will change the world, and those who seize the opportunity to actually realize them will ascend to levels of civilizational sainthood. Think Newtons and Einsteins. But to actually do this, you really need to get your hands on motivated geniuses, specialists among specialists. And as Elon Musk is pointing out, and I am believing him, lack of these geniuses is the fundamental limiting factor of the tech industry. On the other hand, it simply does not suffice to acquire the needed talent from elsewhere. In the first place, it undercuts the loyalty of the native population to larger societal principles. If you, through your blood and sweat, form the basis of a pyramid, it is incredibly disheartening when you have to compete with outsiders for the top spots. And if Elon Musk is correct that there is a lack of homegrown talent, then the suggestion of importing talent from elsewhere essentially means a creation of a new foreign ruling class. That's what it boils down to. This is the practical effect. What's even worse is that if you fulfill demand for excellency and talent in this manner, you are further disincentivizing the natives from even attempting to produce their own homegrown supply. This is a viable strategy. I have learned that from Stellaris. But there is a price to be paid. You essentially give in to the march of history. So the patriotic approach has to be better, no? It prioritizes the native population and defends it from being corroded through sort of a Faustian globalistic deal with the evil abstract numbers. It guards the original spirit of the nation. Well, yeah, it does, from one angle. But it leaves a whole new vulnerable flank. The moment you stop playing the global economics game for ideological reasons, patriotism in this context, you shoot yourself in the leg. This is similar to Germany destroying its own power industry for ideological reasons. They chose the perceived virtuous approach and ended up dead in the water. To overcome the global competition, to cut oneself from dependency on foreign supply, A nation needs to be certain that it is fully capable of replacing it. Otherwise, you have just destroyed your own industry sector, and in the end, still made yourself dependent on those who did not. You cannot just attempt to produce homegrown supply. You really need to succeed. Well, Vivek Ramaswamy tried to point out the fundamental problem, which is, according to him, American culture itself. It simply venerates mediocrity too much. Therefore, has a serious issue of striving towards the needed excellency. This was not well received because the patriots were, of course, a bit defensive about their own culture. Nonetheless, he is almost correct. Almost, but not fully. It is a mistake to attribute the worship of mediocrity to American culture itself. No, the problem is much deeper, and it concerns us all. It certainly touches the whole West, but it also spreads everywhere else where industrialization itself takes its hold. In the end, there will be even no foreign talent to potentially import. The upcoming idiocracy is a global crisis of modernity, and it stems from the very premise of what modernity is. Americans specifically actually even do have some tactics of countering it, for example through material success obsession. But I don't think this is particularly healthy, and in the end it will just make stupid people get rich for doing stupid things. The idiocracy will still win because it originates on a deeper level. The idiocracy will win because the whole modern paradigm has issues which have never been successfully addressed. The reason why modern societies are pushed towards mediocrity is because in these societies, power itself originates in the mediocrity of the masses. The mass is the driving power factor here. This is the defining trait of modernity. Let me explain. Power in society is derived from the potential to cause targeted violence. That's why the plated nobility on heavy horses ruled the Middle Ages. They were the guys to bash your head if you did not toe the societal line.
Come and see the violence inherent in the system!
However, with all that gunpowder, with all that population growth, with the rise of the self-conscious middle class, the tables turned. Suddenly there is a mass of people capable of toppling a whole government if they are sufficiently organized. In the continental Europe, this was marked by the French Revolution at the end of the 18th century, and in America this was a few decades before, during the Independence War. This demonstrates what mass modernity is. It is a world in which the ultimate violence lies in the hands of the masses. But if you do not want to burn in a barbaric inferno of French Revolution, you need to placate these masses through ideology. The goal is to tame the masses. First, to achieve some stability, and if you manage that, you may even get them to march in a line and shoot where you point. Napoleon proved that immediately. And since that time, the system was always about catering to masses. It does not matter whether it was communism trying to convince the workers that we are all equals, or whether it was fascism and its notion of achieving brotherly community which can somehow shoot its way to some future prosperity. Or finally, whether it was the notion of liberal democracy, in which you have the honor that your vote is as important as one coming from a literal homeless junkie.
But the people are retarded.
Despite their different promises of their perspective ideas of virtue and meritocracy and prosperity, these ideologies, still in the end, cannot escape from practical Faustian nature of modernity. They still see people as numbers. They still want to just placate and influence the masses. They build the same factory-based schools in order to mold the youth. They surround you with the same bullshit jobs and grind you down through the machinery of modern bureaucracy. They all try to boil society down to the lowest common denominator, the unremarkable mediocrity. Whatever these ideologies may try to do to escape its clutches, they still will end up drifting towards the mean, because there, at the peak of the bell curve, stands the eternal normie, the main source of potential for violence in mass society. And whenever push comes to shove, the easiest way to make mass society stable is to make normie into an unremarkable, incapable, and obedient citizen. It is simply the most practical approach. And here we are getting to something interesting. The question of mathematical practicality. It does not matter whether you import, let's say, your engineering intelligentsia from elsewhere, or whether you make it homegrown. In both cases, you are breeding the people who will have the mathematically evil abstract approach of people being numbers, and they will choose the seemingly most practical approach, which is enabling societal mediocrity. This is the real issue. If you do not have an engineering technocratic class, you are economically shooting yourself in the leg when met with the surrounding forces of globalization. But if you do have it, no matter whether imported or homegrown, you are giving in to the people who will push you towards mediocrity because it is the comfortable and practical thing to do. Not even mentioning that it helps them to lower future threats of career competition they might face otherwise. To solve this pickle, you need not only to focus on homegrown excellence, but you also need to rethink what the desired kind of excellence is. Holistic excellence is not one which is only obsessed with numbers and algorithms and engineering genius. And I say that as a coder. This is only half of the equation, the one representing order. But you also need to, psychologically, master the creative and destructive forces of chaos. This is the real inventive part of genius and true excellence. The exploratory, discovery-driven genius is not one who is solely obsessed with hard data and cold dead logic. It is also one who operates on a hunch, one who just feels based on an intuitive, dreamlike level, one who receives divine inspiration. To put it in funny terms, you can't be only autistic, you need to be also a bit schizo. This is something modern civilization has an immense problem of understanding. But if you want geniuses like Isaac Newton, you need to also remember that Newton was a schizo-occultist who delved into magic. This is not some surplus imperfection of his. It is precisely one of the instrumental traits needed to actually do genius discoveries. And in a layer above that, if these geniuses are not to create a crazed technocratic class that will, again, push society to practical mediocrity, they need kingly spiritual values. Values which permit them to see people not only as numbers, but also as human stories and feelings and desires and vices and virtues and all of that. They need to see both the large picture and the realm of lived experiential details. In the context of modern society, this complex picture of what true divine excellency is actually cannot be fulfilled neither by the industry-driven Muscovite approach, nor through the MAGA idea of leaning into national identity. No amount of tweaking and nudging of your national identity is enough. You need something more. The same way Germanic culture and Roman imperial heritage needed Christianity to build Western civilization. In modernity, you need new, enlightened spiritual philosophy. And this time Christianity will not suffice. It simply is too removed from the world. It has too much of a baggage, not to mention that Christianity is precisely the reason why we ended up where we are. So, concerning not only the specific American discourse, but the totality of modern humanity, we need a new philosophical system. And this is where our efforts should be focused. System which is not at odds with the world and its reality. A system which is truthful and harmonized with scientific knowledge, but also one which curbs the technocratic excesses of practical mathematics. One which values individual human divine spark, so to speak. And finally, if we are to rediscover vitality, prosperity, true innovativeness, this philosophical system needs to help us to stay connected to the miraculous divine nature of our universe. Only if we build such a spiritual renaissance can we study and love this universe. Only then can we see and feel meaning. Only then can we be filled with the great awe